I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I'm so happy you're here. Today, I have Dr. Carl Gene Brown, RN, PhD, FAAN. He's got a million titles, but he's also a fiber artist that makes amazing, bright, colorful quilts. And he's been juried into a bunch of big name shows. He's learned from some of the best. He is just out there creating some amazing art. And I'm so excited that you guys get to hear our conversation today because it's fantastic. So buckle up, let's get into it, and let's hear from Carl. Hey there, fans of Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Are you wondering how you can support the show? Well, let me tell you, there's a few different ways. One is that you can go to YouTube, like and subscribe, and just follow along over there. We show videos, so if you haven't checked it out already, you can head over to YouTube. It's just Not Your Granny's Quilt Show, and you can see all sorts of fun stuff. Sometimes the guests have show and tell. If you're like me and you like to just see people's faces when they're talking, it's just kind of an added element that helps bring you into the conversation. Also, you can head over to patreon.com/, not your granny's quilt show to join the Patreon family. When you sign up and pay for a membership, you get a Not Your Granny's Quilt Show logo sticker sent to you, but also you get access to the episodes ad free. So head over to patreon.com/, not your granny's quilt show to check that out. Also, I have a merchandise shop. I have multiple items, t-shirts, mugs, stickers, you name it, it's there. And it's just stuff I've designed myself. Some of it has logos, some of it doesn't, and it's just fun merch. So go check that out. It's nygqs.printify.me, and you can just go there. There is a link in the description below. So go check that out and help the show, help support, show your fandom, and let people know that you love the show too. Hi, Carl. How are you?
I'm great, Amanda. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so happy to have this conversation.
Thanks for the invite. I'm from Rachel and Crafty Monkeys connecting us, so I'm really excited to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Always a big shout out to
Rachel.
Crafty Monkeys and Breaking the Blocks. We're friends, so it's fun when these collaborations can happen
Yeah,
because, you just get introduced to new people all the time, and I love it.
that's also the beauty of the quilting world, I think, as well. You just meet so many people.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a big group of friends, which is lovely with
I
all the
mean,
same.
if you think about our life before quilting, it would be like, wow, and how many, I don't know, they're not like best friends, right? But they're like people that you can connect with or will give you
Mhm.
an honest opinion. So, yeah, thinking back to what life was like before all this started.
Yeah, boring. No, I'm just kidding. But definitely it's more colorful and I feel like more interesting for sure. But
Amazing people with
yeah,
amazing talent. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, absolutely. Well, before we dive into all that, I want to know how you got into quilting anyway, because you came from a healthcare world. You're a PhD, you're an RN, you're an FAAN.
Right. Yeah. Fellow in
Yeah.
the American Academy of Nursing. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So how the heck did you get here?
as you said, I'm 30 years as a cancer nurse. I have done just about everything in cancer nursing, from staff nurse to nurse manager, nurse practitioner. I've written two symptom management textbooks, one for patients who are undergoing treatment, and then one for healthcare providers. Um, PhD. I've done cancer nursing research, and in the back of my of being a very 20 years in the military.
Mm,
And in the back of my mind, I was also doing some, I don't know, or Christmas ornaments, or I was always kind of, I don't think that crafty is really a popular word, but I was kind of crafty. I'd hot glue something or sew something, but I never had a sewing machine. And
mm,
I had these really good friends who I had made this partridge as a Christmas ornament for them. And I gave that to him. It was beautifully beaded. And if you go back and look at my Instagram, you probably can find a picture of it. And my friend who was making clothing said, "You should really get a sewing machine." And I was like, no, no, I grew up with, we had a sewing machine in the house that I was never interested in. And, it was a grandmother that did amazing quilts for all of her grandkids. And I was just like, no, that's not going to be the world for me. And my friend said, you should. You can get a decent sewing machine for $100 on Amazon. And if you don't like it, you can give it to charity and that, or a local school. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I will give it a try. I was kind of looking for something else to broaden my world. And gee, Amanda, after the first stitch, I was completely just hooked. It was
mm,
just amazing. It was kind of like, I don't know, finding a diamond or something that had been missing in my life. And I guess the rest is history. I've been sewing for about 6 years. I started out doing a lot of traditional patterns. I think I
mm.
made coasters one year for everybody for the same story that a lot of people tell. And then it was table runners. And then I started making some bed quilts for people. And then it just kind of like blew up. And I think COVID came along too at about that same time.
Mm,
And I
mhm.
really needed something to keep my mind busy, keep busy. And so now I barely ever will use a pattern for anything. I have a lot of respect for patterns, and I have a lot of respect for people who make patterns. And I recently went back and did a pattern of laundry basket quilts. So I
Oh
picked
yeah.
this really hard pattern.
Mhm.
And I just, after 2 years of not doing a pattern, I said, I want to see if I really still have these skills. Can I really do this? And it turned out just absolutely beautiful. And so I think part of that is having good traditional sewing skills, which have really helped me quite a bit to do a lot of the improv, like the quilt that's behind me. So, long story short, a friend recommended it. I started it, and it just kind of really exploded.
Wow, that's incredible. And yeah, I think it's fun, like the watching the snowball effect of like, I'm gonna just try this little thing. And it's like, okay, well, I bet I could do this. Well, I bet I could do that. And just seeing where things can go. And now, yeah, like you're doing like full improv pieces and, making it more on the fiber art side of things instead of, yeah, sticking with traditional patterns. But I think it's funny too, like when you know the rules, it makes it easier to break them and branch out from them because you're like, well, I know this works, so what about this? Because you can always fall back on that, right? But almost branching out to me, trying different things for my own practice has made me a better piece or a better sewist because I understand how fabric works a lot better because I've broken the mold, because I've tried different things.
Yeah. I mean, a great example is a quarter inch seam or a scant. I mean, that there's nothing worse than even making a beautiful improv piece
Hmm.
where nobody, there's no point to match. However, when you go to stretch that on a long arm, if you have gone way too scant, now and because of the way that you're stretching on a long arm, if you don't have that quarter-inch seam, you're going to have a hole right there in the middle, and there's not a lot you can do about that, and so
Yeah.
that's just a really like simple example of how important, just that basic skill that you learn very early on,
Hmm.
that really helps you out a lot. Oh, and not using fabric scissors for other things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like these are for fabric only. I have to keep all my scissors hidden. Like the only ones that are visible that can be seen in plain sight are ones that can be used for whatever. But I have a special spot for all my scissors where nobody comes and touches them. So
Well, and sometimes it's not even the other person, my spouse that lives in the house,
no.
it's me like, oh, it won't make any difference if I pop this box open. And, but, it's kind of like I mean, I think that a lot of notions can be expensive. A good pair of scissors can be very expensive. And so you try
Yeah.
to honor that and not get too unhappy when they don't cut the way that you want them to. So,
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, it's my fault.
yeah.
That's so funny. Well, what, yeah, like what was your favorite when you were making patterns? What was your kind of favorite type of pattern to make? Were they really detailed or?
Um, yeah, they started getting more and more difficult, once you learn that you could successfully make a half square triangle or a flying geese.
Mhm,
And, I always made those larger and then cut them down because inevitably I was trying to squeeze them in. I think it's just a common progression like a lot of people do. And then the patterns began to be more and more and more complex.
mhm,
And I'm like, oh, I think I can try that. No, I shouldn't have tried that. Or, so I really complex and definitely, the laundry basket quilt that I did. In December, I did it for an auction for cancer nurses for scholarships. And I
mhm.
thought, I don't know if this is going to work. And it just turned out amazingly beautiful. And so more and more intricate, definitely. I remember the first time I took a quilt to a long armor, and it was kind of this old crusty guy. And
Mhm.
I just thought this was the best thing ever. And I went to pick it up and I said, so, what did you think about my quilt? And he goes, you and I have the same problem in quilting. And I said, really, what is that? And he goes, that you don't know how to match points. And I'm not very good at matching points. And I left there like with my head down. But
No.
then I got this idea about, okay, well, if you're going to do this and spend this money and, so I just remember that, and it always sticks in my head because some people be like, "Oh no, it's the Quilt Police," but he really did kind of set me on the journey that. And my mother always used to say that too. If you're going to do something, if you're not going to do it right, then don't bother doing it. So
Mhm.
there have been a lot of half square triangles and geese that got their noses cut off and stuff like that. That uh, do you really, do you really want to put that in a quilt? So.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some different schools of thought on that. And I think I've definitely gotten better over time. But like, yeah, my older quilts, I'm like, oh, what were you doing, girl? And a lot of times it was my points didn't match because I wasn't being consistent with my seam allowance. And it was like I was trying not to hide so much of the fabric in the seam allowance. And but now I'm paying for it because those seams are popping open as those quilts get used and age and washed and loved. So
Yeah, I definitely think, I think I learned early on to cut things larger. So if you want a 2.5 inch square, then I would probably cut those pieces to make a 3 inch half square triangle and then
mhm.
cut them down because there's nothing worse than, it's barely 2.5 and with the seam allowance and it's just going to stretch or pop out. So making
Yeah.
things larger is something I learned pretty early on as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely one of those tips you kind of learn for yourself over time as you make more and more quilts and try different things. And yeah, I definitely when a pattern, if I'm making a pattern for a client or something and it's calls for, a like you said, like a 2.5 inch
Right.
finished half square triangle, I'm like, okay, we're sizing up because we
Yeah.
all know that when you go to square those things up, like if you try to make it exact, it's going to be too hard to get the exact size you need. And then you end up with wonky points and seams. And for some people, that's fine. They don't care. Go for it. But like somebody's paying
Completely.
me
Yeah.
to make a quilt for them, I'm gonna
Yeah.
make sure those points match.
Right, too. So, I mean, I guess I do spend a lot of time in being perfectionist but
Mm.
it's something that's more self-driven. I mean, we've all had run-in with the Quilt Police, and I think I think they serve a good purpose. And I do. I think that you've got to decide in wherever you are in your quilting journey, um, if it's going to go on a bed. And wow, I like, my mom used to, I'll just tell you the story.
Yeah.
I came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, and I had crooked lower teeth, and I wanted to go and see an orthodontist. And my mom said, well, my mom wished that we had more money so that she could do that, but she always said those teeth give you character. And so it's kind of like those wonky patches that you put into a quilt. Does it give it character? Anyway, I finally saw an orthodontist. I'm getting way off, but it
No.
was kind of like you kind of have to decide. And sometimes a crooked tooth, sometimes a wonky half square triangle or something like that is really it's endearing to
Yeah.
piece as well. It's also nice to go back and look at your quilts. I just did in January did a 30 quilt show to Road to California. And they
Mhm.
called me within 2 weeks and said, "Hey, we had somebody that backed out. Anyway, you could get 30 quilts ready in 2 weeks to hang." And it was like, and so I did this like traditional to what I had just made, and it's really cool about how they really did change over time. But many of them were really nice quilts that I was really happy to put in a show. Just don't look at
Yeah.
that half square triangle or something like that. So,
Like just glance across it. Don't stare at it too long.
right, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, 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 for sure. It's it is funny, yeah, to look back and go, like you think about how where you started and where you've come and how sometimes it's again like the idea that you've done so many more seams now than you did before and when you were making those older quilts and then being able to appreciate the progress but then also know when you're messing up or like know when
Mhm.
you're not being as perfect and then also choosing to let it go versus just not having the skills to make it perfect. And
Right.
that I think that makes a big difference too. Because if it's for myself, sometimes I'm like, it's fine. I just want these colors or I just want this
Hmm.
quilt and I'm not looking for perfection. But I mean, I think I get to exercise that perfectionism muscle plenty when I'm doing stuff for clients because I'm not going to put something out that doesn't meet my own standards of good and perfect. So,
Right,
um,
because their best friend's going to come over that's really good at quilting and go, these points don't match up. Are you sure you don't want to ask for some of the money back or something?
yeah, yeah, it's like don't look at it. No. Yeah, exactly. It's like I that has my name on it. That's like a part of, something I'm putting out in the world and that someone else is paying for. So, yeah, I definitely have that perspective there too sometimes. So it's kind of funny, but
Yeah, I learned that from, I have done a lot of education and classes with probably some pretty famous quilt teachers. And there's
yeah.
a quilt teacher that, I remember having a conversation with her about um, that amazing piece has your name all over it, but that piece where that's not right, or there's a little hole there, why would you want to attach your name to that? So,
Mhm.
in a negative connotation. So it works very great when you want to attach your name to something that's really great. But you
Yeah.
also, especially in the world that I live in, which is I don't make anything that I don't think will be that I will send off to some kind of show. That's just the world that I live in now. And there's a lot of things that I don't end up showing. But, I learned from her that a great piece will have your name all over it, and a bad piece will have your name all over it. And you can build yourself up if that's what you're looking to do in a quilting community. And you can, start climbing the steps. But when you submit something that's not really so great,
Mhm.
then you start taking yourself back down. So
Yeah.
it's a two-way street.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be it can be a good motivator for sure and definitely keeps me, on my best like in my best self, in my best mindset to get something done and it does help my own because then it's like, am I really going to be okay with that? Because I
Mhm.
do have some quilts that were rushed at the end or it was a test or whatever. And I just needed to get the quilt finished. And I was behind and there's some mistakes and I'll hang them up, I'll still display them. But then those mistakes are staring me in the face every single time. And it's like, I'm not going to undo the quilt. I'm not going to, I'm I don't feel anything about it one way or the other, but it's just like, yeah, I have to look at that for the rest of my life, not quilt's
Yeah.
life. So, it is kind of it can be like an internal struggle, I think, more than anything. Cause I think if someone's going to come judge your quilts and be like, your points didn't match, I don't like this quilt anymore, then maybe they shouldn't be your friend, but also,
Yeah. I think it's for me it's great about 90% of the time. I do find also that I'm sure there are famous quotes about that, about how perfectionism actually can extinguish your creative passion.
Mhm,
And I definitely do get to some of those. I definitely do get to some of those points, not points, places in my creative world where it's probably time for me to walk away from it for a while, or take a break,
mhm,
or yeah, and I often say, well, who are you doing this for? Why are you doing it? I mean, I think any artist, Picasso was probably like, who am I doing this for? Or what am I doing this for? Maybe that's
mhm,
not a great example because I don't think he was even famous until after he died. Many of
mhm.
these artists. Anyway, it's kind of like it can become a point of really damaging your creativity.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I don't know which is worse because if I need I need this quilting world. It's everything to me except for my family now and my dog, and it's everything to me. And I do it every day that I can, and I'm trying to build a name for a reason, and I don't want to damage that. So.
yeah, yeah. It can be yeah, like feel like on the fence, I guess. And like, do you have ways that you kind of deal with that voice in your head that's telling you something's not good enough or deal with that perfectionism?
Wow, that voice that's sitting on your shoulder, it could be anything like that point's no good, which is probably the truth too. You're never going to be, you're never going to get where you want to go. You're an imposter. Who are you trying to fool?
Hmm.
I've heard a lot of people talk about that too, with training with a lot of well-known teachers that
Hmm.
even they have problems. Yeah, I have a friend who basically said that person was in my studio with me, and that person was little and sitting on my shoulder saying, you're never going to be good at anything. Or at this,
Yeah.
something else that you're trying. How long before you give up and sell all your stuff? And she said she basically goes to her studio door, opens the door, and says, get
Mm.
out of my studio, go away, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I've never really tried that. My spouse would probably be thinking, "Who are you talking to that you're telling to get out of your studio?" But that's a
Yeah.
way. I really find those times come up when I'm tired too. Like, you've made 100 half square triangles, and I don't know, whoever, many people have said, when that point comes. It's when the finger slips under the needle as the sewing machine is running, or you cut yourself with a blade. And so, just trying to be cognizant that I'm too tired, and that also I'll be like, oh, that looks terrible. And then I'll go to bed and sleep on it, and I'll wake up and go, wow, now I see where I can go with this. Um,
Yeah.
so those are just some ways. Just open the door and tell your negative self
Yeah.
to come out, to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was in my conversation with Aline from Orbital Quilting, and she had said, they tell their students to leave your insecurities somewhere else. Leave them outside the door. They have to stay out there because in here you have, you're secure, you're confident, you know what you're doing, you're learning, but you're what, you're practicing and that's okay. And like leaving it outside the door. And I was like, oh, that's really good. And but I like that, like telling it to get out because I think I have physically out loud said like, stop, stop talking to me like that, or like, no,
Yeah.
we're not talking to ourselves that way today. And like, get
No.
out of here. And, you know, I'm in there by myself, so nobody's hearing me say these things. So I think maybe it feels a little more comfortable for me to talk to myself out loud. But I like that. I like that idea of telling it because I think we can spiral if we keep it inside. It just keeps spiraling and we keep hearing that same voice. But if we like stop and physically give ourselves the words to say, get out, could maybe stop that cycle. I don't know if that
Yeah, because
works.
the flip side of that is that voice sometimes is really good too. So
Yeah.
I guess we want to be able to decide when we want the voice there and when we don't, right? It
Yeah.
sounds like life, it's kind of like when you want somebody around. But
Yeah.
the voice definitely does serve as those colors are not good together, or and sometimes that voice is usually right too. That's
Mm,
kind of I think it's like intuition.
hmm.
What are you thinking putting those two colors together or something like that?
Yeah.
So,
You're like, I'm trying to be ingenious. Hello.
mhm. Right. Trying to make the best quilt ever. That's going to
Spark.
win every ribbon.
Yeah. Spark a trend and win all the awards. Exactly.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I think sometimes I feel like, I mean, I don't know. The color theory is there for a reason and it works every time for a reason. And I think it's funny, like when you ignore it, just like how much it can affect your piece. And if you just swap a couple of things out and go back to the color wheel and following that, it's like, oh, right, this works for a reason. And I don't know.
No, yeah, I mean, again, somebody else that I studied with would be like, put a checker, you have the solid quilt, like the one behind me, put a strip of checker through that, that just runs through. Then I'm like, and she would say it's to catch the person's eye, or,
Mhm.
if you study any art, or that for some people, it's there to stop them. Like if your eye is going over a painting and you're just going to keep moving, wait a minute, well, my eye just caught something.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's actually an intentional, not ever for me, but sometimes I think it's intentional that it's there probably for a reason. Another person I study with says she uses the colors of 1, 3, 5, and 7. So if you're going to put something unusual there, it's one thing, or three things, or five things, because if it's two things, both of your eyes are going to land on those. So again,
Mhm.
somebody else thinking about the odd approach to it, like circles, one
Yeah.
circle or three circles or faces or whatever you want to put into that. So
Yeah. Yeah,
all
because
kinds
then
of
your
different
eyes move.
theories.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of studying with a lot of different people, and which to me is very positive, but it's something that I've really worked on this last year is if you work with famous quilters, it would not be unusual that you would come out of that class and your quilt that you're making looks exactly like that person that you've been studying with. And I've really worked this last year to well, for the last 4 years, I've studied with a lot of people because I felt like if I wanted to move into the improv world or the abstract world,
Hmm.
no, there wasn't any quilt pattern that was going to help me get to that.
No.
And so studying with them, and it's kind of like a toolbox, and you learn skills. It could be cutting skills, it could be sewing skills, it could be color, it could be all of those, and putting those kind of into a toolbox. But really, then how do you get your work to look like it's just your work and not artist one and artist two and artist three? And
Yeah.
if you ever go to like QuiltCon, or if you go, and you would be like, oh, that's a student of so and so, and that's a student of so and so, and that's fine.
Hmm.
But what I've really been trying to work this last year is how do I morph those skills that I've learned because I don't want my stuff to look like anybody else's. And I think that I've kind of made my way with that and learning what does and doesn't work for me. And so, but again, that the real difference here is, are you being a quilter or a quilt maker? Um, because you want to make lovely pieces for friends and family and for yourself. And I don't want anybody to think that I don't think that that is just tremendous. Like,
Yeah.
um, just not my world right now. And so when I say, I'm trying to make things that only look like, or that I want to put in a show, that's just kind of the world that I'm living in. But I have complete respect for people that make very, very intricate um, applique. Wow, how
Hmm.
frustrating is that? That to me is just like a skill um, but it just really depends on what world. And I want to make sure I'm not, disrespecting the people that are living in the
Yeah.
pattern world or anything like that, because
No.
I have great respect for them and I can't wait to go back to. I have a whole box of patterns to go back to. I hope I'm not rambling.
No, no, you're good. You're good. We're here to hear from you, not me. So this is great. Um, but I don't think I wouldn't take anything you're saying as like, oh, he doesn't like people who make normal quilts. No, like normal. I don't even know what's normal. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
follow
right.
patterns. But
Right.
I think you're right though. Like if I look at even when you're following somebody's pattern, if I like someone's color scheme or we have similar tastes in colors and I make their pattern with similar colors from like maybe their cover quilt, then somebody's going to look in that and go, oh, that's so and so's quilt. Well, no, it's mine. But, so it's kind of that same idea. But even, yeah, like you're saying in the improv, more like art side of things, you can still end up making your pieces look like your instructor because they're giving you their knowledge, their technique, what they do, and then yeah, finding a way to incorporate it and make it your own, give it your own voice, and taking the parts you like and leaving the parts you don't like. And I think you have to make quilts that look like theirs in order to understand what that process is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go, oh, I actually hated this piece of this and I don't want my quilts to look like that, which is fine. Like you do what you want to do, but I'm going to do what I want to do. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, not every painter paints the exact same way. Not every, sketch artist sketches the same way. It's like we all
Right.
have our different kind of avenues, and emulating people that we admire helps us get to where we want to be and gives us, I think, a stronger voice as artists because we
Mhm.
can understand where our choices are coming from better.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you. And I also always try to, like, the piece that's behind me.
mhm,
That's kind of, I think, my signature now. And these skills that I learned, the cutting and the curve, that's Sheila
mhm.
Frampton Cooper. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to talk with her. And I try to, tell people, hey, I learned this skill from Sheila and the wonderful curve work that I would have never been able to do. I love curves now. And, as skinny as I can make the line with a 1/4 inch seam on each side of it, how can you and make sure that people are like, is that applique? But it's like, no, it's just very, very skinny. But anyway, trying to honor the teachers, Irene Roderick, Nancy Crow, people that I've learned with, um, but also and honoring them and thanking them for what you learned, but then starting to, like I said, work really hard to kind of make my own way and my own path,
Yeah, yeah, I
which
love
is a
that.
lot of fun.
Yeah. So were you just, interested in the work that these people were doing and took a class, or did you like source these people specifically because of what they were making and how they were making it?
I think I got to probably about the end of 2022. I started saying, okay, I'm ready to move on from traditional work to something else. And who do I think are the best? Um, who have books, who teach, and then I sought those people out. I if they had an online, and really during 2022, everything was online. I think because of COVID, if I have everything lined up right,
Hmm.
and sought them out and tried to take a class with them and learn from them. Yep. So, um, you know, I think these people are pretty well, pretty well known people. If you ask, if you go into QuiltCon and say who are the best teachers,
Hmm.
if you who are the best five teachers or really great, not the best, but who are, really great five teachers that if you had an opportunity to learn with, who would you learn with? And over a couple of years, I took classes with them. I think Irene Roderick, really this amazing improv. I don't know if you've ever talked with her or seen her books, but they're just this book, and it's it shows you how to make all these improv pieces. So it's kind of like a cookbook, the
Okay.
first part of it. So that's not a mystery how you made that checkerboard or and then the second part is how do you I'm her work is called dancing with the wall,
Okay.
and then make all these pieces, put them up on the wall, see what sticks, how can you bring them all together. So, I mean, I think she's really done a lot for modern quilting and just an example of somebody that I sought out to take a class with. So
Yeah,
that's how it works.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think sometimes, at least for me, I forget that I can like go online. And a lot of teachers have online courses still. They'll still travel and go teach in person too, but there's like a lot of online content I can interact with if I can't travel to go learn from people that I admire. And I'm like, oh right, I can just do that. I think we just kind of, at least from my perspective as an elder millennial, I kind of get lost in the sauce as far as like scrolling and admiring people from afar and then forgetting like, oh yeah, there's websites I can actually like go take their class. I can go learn from them. Like I don't have to just like be this person from a distance and just liking their Instagram photos or hearing about them or only seeing them at Quilt Show. Like there's different ways to interact. And so that's a good reminder.
And many of them, they want to go and teach. They'll go and teach for the people that live in the cold areas in the winter. They want to go to, I don't know, Arizona or Southern California, and then you've got these, great schools that bring all of these teachers together, like Madeline Island is one that has like a lot of, brings everybody together, brings the
Mhm.
teacher together for a week. Um, so there are always great opportunities, and it's really great to be in a room with the teacher and other people that are in the same boat as you are because you make friends. You
Mhm.
learn what works, what doesn't work. You can actually pick their brain a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
I would advise that, for anybody, not inexpensive, but it's like a week of vacation for me. I really enjoy traveling somewhere and working with somebody. And again, these places are usually in really nice, fabulous, who doesn't want to go to, Tucson or somewhere to, especially if you're from a cold area. So
Mhm.
Washington. And then the flip side of that is in the summer, they want to go to places like Bangor, Maine and
Mhm.
the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or Seattle. So
Yeah.
that's how it kind of works.
Yeah. Come up farther north where it's a little cooler in the summer. Not
Mhm.
here, but north of me,
Right.
north and west. Um, yeah, that's good. And I think too, sometimes people are like, oh, it's expensive. And it's like, yeah, I mean, but you're also paying for an expert's time and you're investing in yourself and your craft and how much is that worth to you, Like I think it can be it can be something you have to talk yourself into, but I think anytime I've paid for a class or gone to something to learn and invested in myself and given myself permission to do that, I've been really happy and grateful I took that experience because I wouldn't have had that otherwise. And I would have, you know, I tend to talk myself out of things to be like, oh, that's too expensive. You can't afford that. Or, you don't maybe not deserve is the right word, but like you know, you don't need to
Waste.
learn that. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
wasteful of that money, but it's like, well, but it's helping me do the thing I love
Mhm.
even better and learn different things. And so I think that can be an argument for it. If you want to improve your craft and your skills, then going to learn from experts is kind of, you know, your stepping stones towards that betterment and improvement. And of course, you can take the online stuff. You can go watch free stuff on YouTube, but I think like you said, there's nothing like an in-person experience. And coming from, I was a teacher, an elementary teacher for 8 years, so like the educational kind of experience of being in a classroom and having classmates and following along with a teacher and getting that kind of one-on-one or, small group experiences.
Mhm.
There's
And it's comparable to a cruise or a week in
mm,
Hawaii. And,
mhm,
it just depends on what I think all those are great. Hawaii for
mhm,
a week, cruise, but also it's also nice to leave your everyday life of taking care of the dog and taking care
mhm.
of the house and
Yeah,
managing everything and leave that to the spouse. And then you get to go and do, it's great, and many of these you can sew all day if you want, or you can sew into the night, or you can,
yeah,
so I would advise it for anybody that can afford it. So,
yeah, yeah. And I know there's more affordable options, and sometimes the online stuff is a more affordable option because you don't have
mhm.
to go anywhere, and it's usually just like an on-demand thing, so you can kind of do it at your own pace if you're in that phase of life where you need that. So I love the accessibility of that, but I think yeah, if you can get in-person experiences, it makes it really exciting and
Yeah.
super fun.
And but let's take a moment and really the skills that I never was in a room with Sheila Frampton Cooper. So that, again, the quilt behind me, those are skills that I learned from watching her. And so those teachers have to be good at managing a camera, an overhead camera, switching
Hmm.
back and forth.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of great ones out there. And we started talking about crafty monkeys. You've got Rachel who has built a whole business around uh, teachers that teach. And hey, you've got teachers from all over the world that are teaching. They may be teaching at 2 a.m. their time so that it's of a decent time where, but let's, to me, they're two different animals completely. A
Hmm.
monkey, a crafty monkey, it's kind of like those are really great opportunities because, like, I'm not ever going to learn from that person from Peru if I don't use this online technique. Um, and those people are real, most of them are very good at being able to manage a computer and manage overhead. And if it were not for that during COVID, I would have moved on to, I don't know, knitting or crocheting or collage or so it was really valuable, but it is a completely different experience to be in a room with a teacher, with people who are doing the same thing, suffering the same challenges of creativity.
Hmm.
I think we've sold the online thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really, there are so many different ways to engage with different material and different educators. And I think that's what's so great about this time we're in is that there is accessibility to people and content that you wouldn't necessarily have
Yeah.
access to. And yeah, like Crafty Monkeys is a great platform for that. And
$40,
I
it's
know
like,
she gets amazing people
yeah, yeah.
in there. So
And you
that's
get amazing teachers that they know they're not going to get rich off of teaching these classes, but there is this, that's
yeah.
kind of what I also feel too, is like bringing other people along, sharing what you know, sharing a different technique, maybe, that's part of the reason why I do Instagram, 3,500 followers. It's not, oh my gosh, it's not for my personality or that I'm, trying to look really important. I think it's for me, I my real goal in life is to bring people along that never thought they could do what they're doing. And specifically for me, that is not trying to put one gender aside, but it's to bring guys along.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a man that's there with his wife, and they're going through Road to California, and they see that this guy has done these 30 quilts, and then maybe there's a guy that says, hey, that's really cool, and maybe I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole interest is trying to bring other people along, um, because I had a friend who retired and basically said in his 1 year of retirement that he had completed all of Candy Crush. That's
Mm.
what he accomplished in a year. And and
Okay.
I don't want that for my life. And I think there are a lot of people that don't want that for their life, right? So it's like, hey, this guy runs a sewing machine. Hey, or
Mm.
yeah, this looks like this is something that I might be able to do. And
Yeah.
so it's trying to bring people along as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to have, you know, representation of everyone because quilting is for everyone and making art is for everyone. And I think there is a stigma with a sewing machine that it's women's work
Yeah,
and you know, quilters largely are a population of women, but I think it's so important to show that everybody can do it. And
yeah,
just just because you're a man doesn't mean that you can't sew things that are incredible to look at and they don't have to be cutesy. They don't have to be, it's like it
yeah,
doesn't have to be this on trend newest fabric collection that has like floral, it's like you can do there's so many other things out there to do with a sewing machine than to just make the trendy patterns with trendy fabric. And
yeah.
I mean, I love it. I do,
I do
but that
too.
can be intimidating to a male who might be interested
Or
in doing,
anybody, yeah, it can be
yeah,
intimidating for anybody.
yeah.
Certainly bringing people along. I love this idea. Also, a friend of mine was telling me that, or maybe it was somebody that I follow on Facebook or Instagram, that's 10-year-old grandson was there, and she's a really big quilter, and he said, Grandma, I would like to make my own quilt. And I'm just like,
Mm,
wow, that is so. And so, in a weekend they made a little, big square granny square quilt.
yeah.
That is so cool, and what my life would have been like if somebody had allowed me to do that. Because in high school for me, I had an art teacher that was like, yeah, you need to go to choir, or you need to go play tennis, because you're never
Mm,
going to be an artist. And I think it's like how we negatively approach this when, yeah, I could only draw a stick person, and that teacher was right for that medium. But it's like, what about pottery? What about fabric? What about
right.
so that's another piece of it, as well. There's just so many things to do now.
Hmm.
And in this world, I think it's great to be able to shut off the news, shut off all the negativity in the world and do something fun and joyful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having a skill of some kind, a crafting skill is
Mhm.
you don't have, yeah, like you said, you don't have to be good at everything, but there are so many other options. And if you're surrounding yourself with people that are closed off to the idea that you could try something different or that you could experiment and we like to say FAFO in our house, fuck around and find out. Like the more you fuck around, the more you find out. It's kind of like a graph, but it's um but that willingness to mess up and try something and
You
watch
made me
some.
blush.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We cuss on this show a little bit
Okay,
sometimes. So,
oh,
oh
that's
well,
good.
by
That's
we
good.
I mean me. I have a sailor's mouth. So, I can't believe it took that long for something to come out of my mouth. So anyway, but yeah, just the idea that like you have to be willing to fail a little bit to grow. And I think when you're taking a class from somebody new, you're going to mess up the technique. You're going to
Oh yeah.
try, when you're trying something new for the first time, curves used to scare the crap out of me. But like I finally just sat down and did it with art gallery fabrics of all the fabrics, which I was like, wow, that was really hard. And then when I did it with like regular quilting cotton, I was like, oh, it's not that hard at all, you know. Um, and I can still do it with art gallery. It's just not as stretchy. So, anyway, the idea that maybe, yeah, the medium is what's keeping you from doing the thing you want to do or accomplishing something
Yeah.
artistic, or it's like finding people to encourage your growth is so important too. So sounds like you found a really great slew of teachers and mentors to help you do that. But like, yeah, how is your community? Do you have people around you physically? Do you have like a guild or somewhere that you can meet up with people?
I mean, there are definitely guilds. I'm not a guild person. I think that I'm an extrovert in my everyday life.
Mm,
But I have found in definitely in the quilting that I'm doing now or the fiber art that I'm doing now that I'm much more introverted. It's something that I need to do by myself.
mm,
Um, and I think that Instagram and Facebook have definitely helped to bring people along into communities. Um, that I think have brought a lot of people along, and I've made like a lot of lifetime friends that I probably would have never made. But a guild
mhm.
doesn't work for me, but a guild is really great for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
that's just my kind of my take on it.
Yeah.
Trying not to become too isolated. Um, because then, unfortunately, my husband has to say, oh, that's really good. Or why are you thinking, because it's the only person that you have to run anything by. But unless you
Yeah.
send some pictures to some of your friends and say, what do you think about this? Or how
Hmm.
does this look? Or wow. And
Hmm.
I really need some friends that are like, wow, wow. Yeah, you always say, wow. Would you ever say, oh, I don't really care for that?
Yeah. No.
Or be willing to give some criticism. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it can be dicey. Guilds can be dicey. And not all of them are very open and accepting if you're not an old white lady. And so that can be tricky. Um, Even just being a little younger, on the younger side of people who might go to a guild meeting, it still is like, why are you here? And I'm like, bitch,
mhm.
why are you here? It's like I'm gonna get attitude back because I'm like, this should be for everybody. And if you're excluding people, then that's on you. Like, and so it's nice that there are some different options, and having an online community I think is helpful too if
Mhm.
you don't really have direct in-person people. And I mean, it's not like every time I sew I'm with other people, but I definitely have to send pictures to my friends because I'm like, please tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here or if I'm crazy. Because if I show my husband, he's like, oh, I'm like, and he's like, what am I supposed to be looking at? I'm like, okay, well, anyway, you go back to whatever you were doing. I'll ask my friends. Um, so
Yeah, but I think that I haven't had the reason that I'm not in guilds is not because of the people that I've ran in. I've ran into those people, you get called lady or you get or girls, when there's
mhm,
obviously I really have not had too many problems with that, but I'm also a nurse
mhm,
who for 30 years, and I kind of was like, well, if you're going to invite yourself into a predominantly female profession,
mhm,
or what was a predominantly female craft, then some of that stuff is going to happen.
mhm.
But I would say for the most part, everybody's been very open. I did have a lady one day ask me when I walked into a fabric store if I was there to pick fabric up for my wife. And I said, no, are you here to pick up fabric for your wife? And
Oh my God.
she was like scuttered away. But I really haven't had too many of those outward. Now, if it is kind of a hidden agenda for people, I'm not saying that it's not out there, but I
Sure.
found most people to be really open. Um,
That's good.
it just doesn't seem to work for me. Where I live in Southern
Sure.
California, they're very far away, so you
Mm,
travel 3 hours in LA traffic, so that doesn't.
mm,
I do like Modern Quilt Guild, and they have individual members so that you can be a
yeah.
member. SACWA is another one that you can be a member, but not necessarily have to belong.
Okay.
And again, I think that a lot of Zoom has really helped a lot of those. a lot of guilds to actually to come along. So I don't want
Hmm.
to leave with the idea that,
No.
but I have had opportunities where I have seen some male bashing going on, and
Mm,
probably more so people being impolite or
mm,
quilt critic to anybody that was actually in the room. So
yeah. Ugh.
it
We don't
happened.
need that. We
Yeah.
don't need that.
No.
I don't like it. I think, and kind of going back to saying, like talking about quilt police, I think if it's a person who's coming to you with like a genuine like concern or a genuine like interest in helping you improve something that is like clearly a mistake and not just like a preference, like your points don't match, that's one thing. But if someone, people are judging your quilt because it's not quote unquote traditional or the way that they would make it,
Right.
that shit's for the birds. Like just leave that. That's you leave yourself outside if that's how you're gonna be. But
Yeah.
but I think that can be hard in guilds too, because I think, and not to say all guilds are like this, because whatever, but I just think sometimes people run into that and it's like, you know what, if I just stay home, I don't have to hear that and it's fine.
Mhm. I had
So
this I was telling you about the laundry basket quilt that I
mhm.
made, and right in the center, I posted it, and what does everybody think? And everybody, oh, we love it, we love it. And this lady wrote me and said, "Oh, I don't want you to think that I'm the quilt police, but do you
Then
realize
stop.
that right in the star, your one block is turned upside down?"
Oh shit.
And so I'm like, I'm getting ready to start long arming this. And it was right in the middle. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like, thank you for. And she said, so are you going to, because that would require, it wasn't like on the edge. So,
Hmm.
and it was, so I took it all apart, and put it back together, which I thought was a great skill that I didn't rip anything. But
Hmm.
it was kind of like she felt, I'm really sorry, and I don't want you to think I'm the quilt
Yeah.
police. I'm like, no, because I had 100 people like this and didn't even, it wasn't even, do you like the colors? It was like, your piece is out, and it would have looked terrible.
Yeah.
It was another one of those great lessons, which I think is because of how she approached it with
Yes.
me. Um, it's another one of those stories that I'll never forget. So,
Yeah. No, I think that kind of approach is
like
is
life.
great. Yeah. Like the the idea that someone could come to you and say, "Hey, did you know this?" or like, "Was this intentional?" and not be like, "You did that wrong." I think that's where kind of the policing line is are you coming to me with concern, or are you coming to me to correct me? And it like that approach is everything.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I am kind of amazed at some of the insecurity that I find in quilting. However,
Mhm.
you would think, you would think that we're all coming together to do something that makes us all feel really great and to meet each other and to be happy. And you think about a day and, your spouse walks in and says, are we going to eat dinner at 7 o'clock? And you've been working for 7 or 8 hours, except to go to the bathroom and drink some water. And
Yeah.
it's like, you would think, but there are some people there, that for whatever their insecurity is, they gain their power back by trying to take you down
Hmm.
or to be negative. And I just don't you have that in the real world, and I just don't get it. Yeah, we all mess up sometimes and say, oh, I shouldn't have said it that way, or
Sure.
I'm really sorry. But isn't it amazing to you sometimes that why is this going on in this world? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It just seems so silly and so like it's not that serious. It's fabric and yes, I love it and I do take it seriously, but not so seriously that like, you know, I'm gonna go around telling everybody else what they're doing wrong. Like it's not life or death. It's fabric. And so I think that can be yeah, the insecurity of other people coming out and them projecting that onto you is where if you're not able to differentiate that and go, oh, they're seeing this in themselves. And so they're pointing it out, or, being like, do they have validity to what they're saying? Because sometimes there might be a valid point to what somebody's saying. You just might not like the delivery. Then, that's a different story. But I, I just think, like, yeah, if you're making the stuff that makes you happy, then why does it matter what anybody else is making? Like,
Now, when you ask for criticism, that's a whole other completely different thing. And that, I have, wow, sorry I asked, that. And sometimes I've learned quite a bit from that. In my show that I had, um, I wanted to be with my 30 quilts and talk to people the whole time, and so
yeah,
I was just standing there and a woman went through with friends and she goes, I just don't get any of this. It's like very bright colors and this just doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know what this person was thinking. And I said, well, I'm standing right here.
yeah, you can ask
She's
me.
like, she's like, all of a sudden it was like I had put a nail in her inner tube, her tire, and you could
Yeah.
feel the air leaking out, and her friends are like squirming away, and I'm just like, well, I'll be happy to tell you what I was thinking when I made this, or no, it was more of a. And what was really cool was right across from me were these 100-year-old quilts on the other side of the aisle, which was really this cool current, abstract, and then these, like medallion quilts that
Yeah.
were invented by Martha Washington and friends, and it was
Mhm.
so cool. And I had a medallion quilt that was very bright and abstract and wondering what Martha Washington would think about this. But it's so really cool. And most people appreciated that
Mhm.
juxtaposition of different but not different. But not this lady. She wanted it all to be, I think she just wanted a whole quilt show that was this.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Sure. Go for it. Yeah, like I'm sure there's quilt shows out there that do that, but yeah, I love the like deer in the headlights, especially when like their kind of snarkiness is met with just like calm, just like, yeah, you can ask me anything. And they're like, oh, I mean, I gotta go. It's like, well, why? I'm right. Like,
Yeah.
were you looking for I don't know. I think sometimes people say things like that too, because they're just looking for attention from the people they're with, or they're trying to like spark something because they're maybe feeling like insecure again. Like they may be feeling like, oh, I could never make something that cool, or like don't understand it because they're not actually looking at it. They're just feeling or thinking about the skills that they don't have, or their inability to make something similar, and it comes out as criticism because they're not necessarily in the space to go, oh, that's really cool, I've never tried anything like that, and I probably won't, but also I can appreciate that someone took the time and to learn how to do this and put this all together. And it's just a different mindset for sure, and it's always like so interesting to hear, especially like walking around quilt shows of like things people are saying out loud. I'm like,
I know,
the
right?
person who made that quilt could be standing right next to you and you wouldn't
And
know it.
have, they are eventually are going to be standing there. So if you have something negative to say,
Hmm.
maybe you should wait until it's with a glass of wine or something like that when you're
Yeah.
not standing right here,
Yeah.
especially if it's something that's like, this doesn't work for me because, and it's a really great reason, but
Hmm.
just to be catty about it, you're eventually going to get caught.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I mean, I've been guilty of saying things that I'm like, I should not talk like that out loud. And then I'll switch my mind to be like, okay, like I need to change it and look for one thing that I like about this quilt. It's like maybe I didn't like the colors and that's the thing I said out loud, but it's like, okay, if I can look past the colors, what is something that like I could admire about this or that I can like about this? And I think it can be easy to get kind of stuck in that, like, well, I wouldn't put that in my quilt show. It's like maybe I'm feeling salty because mine didn't get in or my friends didn't get in, or it's like
Yep.
there's so many different reasons to have a certain perspective. But I think staying mindful of like where your headspace is at too when you're looking at other people's art is like they didn't make it for you specifically. So if you don't like it, you can just move along because it's not for you. And
It's
for the people who
fine
love
to
it,
say I don't appreciate that.
yeah,
I don't appreciate that, or I appreciate it, but it wouldn't be something that I would do. And
sure.
that in the living in the world of competitive quilt shows, there's a famous line from a Broadway show, which is, I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, we're all playing games that we all can't win. And
Mm,
so there's only going to, there's 1,000 that were submitted and there are only going to be 300 that were selected and there's only going to be one best in show. And so that means a lot of no's
mhm,
and that can hurdle some people. And I would say that I have really grown in that area as well.
mm,
I view it kind of like as a subway station. The three judges have to stop at the same time that I'm standing there with my quilt, and they
mhm,
have to like it. And if they don't like it, both of us get on the subway and go away. So it depends on the judges. It depends on whether they like your piece.
mhm.
There's all this other stuff around quilt shows too, like you don't realize it, but judges or jurists are trying to bring in pieces that are conducive, that all kind of stick together. And 99% of the time, it doesn't have anything to do with what you've done. So you just resubmit. And
Right,
I probably have learned more from the no's than I have from the yeses. And
right.
I think there is a lot of that I didn't get in, so I'm going to hate everything.
Yeah, yeah. And or just that feeling of like, I I wouldn't or can't produce something that I feel good about entering, or I'm too scared to enter, so I'm gonna just shit on everybody else's stuff. It's like, no, let's not do that. But I also like I think of that phrase like I don't learn anything from my success. I only learn from my failures. And so it's like, yeah, if you hit something out of the park every time, if you're producing nothing but bangers and all you do is win, like what are you actually learning from all that? Like what are you getting from it? And I think ultimately back to like my teacher brain of thinking of like, we learn the best from our mistakes. When we mess something up and then we problem solve to figure out how we messed up, that's where the learning is. That is where, that's everything right there in that nugget of time where you're trying to solve that problem or figure out what went wrong. That's life. That's everything, right? And so if you look past those moments or you try to skip over them because you're scared of that feeling, like you're missing life, you're missing everything. And so it's definitely something I have to preach to myself every day because that perfectionist bug is like in my ear. And but yeah, it's like I get reminded all the time. And I think being a quilt maker and being producing things for other people to view is definitely keeps me in that humility space of like, okay, what am I learning from this? I'm not perfect. Like I mess up all the time. I have to seam rip a lot and I have to, take out quilting, like picking stitches of my quilting, which sucks so bad. It's way worse than seam ripping. If anybody has ever had to pick long arming stitches out, I'd rather
I've had to
poke
do
myself
that.
with a
Yep.
pin.
But it's kind of like here's two experiences. If you walk in to a quilt show and there's a ribbon on your quilt, compared to if you walk in and your quilt's next to the one that has a ribbon on it, which of the moment that you see the ribbon, you're not going to learn much more from that, right?
Right.
Okay, check. But
Mhm.
if your quilt is next to the one, then you can be like, "Oh, I see," or "Oh, I'm going to learn more from
Mhm.
that," because the moment you see the ribbon, then it's just like, "What's the next thing to look
Yeah.
want to?" I think it's a good way to kind of compare those two
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah, shut your brain off because you want. And like, no, there's
Yeah.
lots more stuff out there. But I
Who's
think
going to come up and say something negative to one that's got a best in show ribbon on it? All right, there's
a lot of people, let me tell you what.
oh yeah, that's true. There's a string on it, string hanging on it, or something.
Yeah.
Seen that as
Like,
well.
why did they pick that one? It's like,
They
well,
ironed it. They
you
could have
know,
ironed it.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think I didn't really have much of an opinion on quilt shows for a long time because I just like my local guild. Um, they have one and have had one for most of the time I've been alive. And it's a great show. It's a little more traditional. They have brought more modern in. They have a modern category, which is great to see. And but the last, I'm going to do it again this year, so it'll be the last 3 years that I have been a scribe for the judging because we bring in NACQJ judges for the show, and so getting to just sit there and listen to the judges talk about quilts and how constructive and they're never talking crap about quilts. Like, and I don't, maybe I've just been so lucky that the two judges I had the first year I did it, and then the two judges that came last year, because they cycle in 2-year cycles. So we'll have the same two judges as we did last year, but um they just all their whole focus is like, okay, what are critiques that we can give this person that will help them be better for next time, for when they do their next piece or want to enter another quilt into a quilt show, like what is going to help them so that they could potentially ribbon. Or and there's some of those things weren't even deal breakers. It was just like the visual impact of that quilt was so stunning that they didn't care that the binding wasn't full all the way to the edge. They didn't care that some of the tension of the long arming wasn't perfect. Like they're looking at the overall impact that that quilt has. And those things add up. But I think ultimately just hearing them talk about it made me go, oh, maybe one day I could enter a quilt show. Because I think the idea that somebody would be looking at my quilt and deciding whether they like it or not is like, even the ones that didn't ribbon, they had lots of great things to say. There just were others that were a little bit better in those categories. And so I think, not having had the feedback myself, because I've never entered anything, but just being witness to it happening and being the one to type out the comments that people are going to see and get back from their quilts, has completely opened my mind in a way that like makes me appreciate quilt shows more. I still kind of get a little, I don't know what the word is, but it's still kind of, I don't like the meritocracy of it, or like, oh, this person has won so many awards and so they're a better quilter than anybody else. Like, well, what if there's like a really great quilter out there who just has never entered their quilts? It's like, just because someone wins a bunch of awards, and no shade to you because you've won awards, but it doesn't mean that there aren't also amazing quilters out there who just haven't entered and maybe have no interest in it. So the competition piece makes me feel a little icky sometimes, but I think ultimately, if that's something you want to do, if you want to be in that shows, the competitive circuit of quilting, then by all means, like, do what encourages you to keep moving forward and keep honing your craft and bringing other people into it, and encouraging others as well.
Two thoughts about that. One, anonymous. If you have a truly anonymous quilt show
Hmm.
where I don't know that, I probably have an idea that that's Carl's curved quilts after you've seen some of those, but you don't really know. But it's not always the judges that are invading the anonymity. It is, I see it all the time. I just submitted this quilt to QuiltCon. And you've got if the judges are following you on Instagram, you have just blown your anonymity either
Hmm.
positively or negatively. So I think that when a show is really truly anonymous, I have a
Hmm.
show that's going to Quilt Canada. It
Mm.
was selected, and you absolutely cannot show. You can say, I have a quilt that's going to Quilt Canada, but
Sure.
you could not, before it was juried, not until the show decisions have been made. And to me, that's a truly anonymous,
Yeah.
and that's the way that it really should be. The other thing that just came to mind is that it's amazing when you enter these shows. One of the things that people don't realize you get is that little index card where each of those people have commented, like, yeah, and sometimes it's the binding, or the facing could have been better, but sometimes it's some really, be careful with your shading with one color behind the other.
Hmm.
And so some of those things that you can learn, and it all, really most of the big shows you get, it might be three little words or four little words or a sentence.
Hmm.
Sometimes you think, oh, what were they thinking? But most times if you leave it and then go back to it, you can say, oh, I see what they were talking about. And then you can kind of work on that for the
Yeah.
next one. So that's nice as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, you know, good judges really just are interested in helping you grow as a quilter in your craft. And so I think if you can, it can be up to the person receiving the feedback too. If you're not open to it, it's all going to feel shitty. But if you're open to trying to understand what they were talking about, understand their perspective of like, okay, if I step back and look at my quilt as if I don't know that I made it and whatever, and I don't know my intentions, I don't know, because like you said, it's anonymous or should be anonymous, and those judges are seeing your quilt for the very first time. They don't know who you are. They don't know what your intentions were or why you made the quilt. They can't see any of that information. All they know is what you named your quilt and the techniques that you used and the category it's in. That's it. And so the idea that they're coming after you, it's like they don't know who you are. So how can they be judging you as a person? They're just looking at this one quilt you made. That's it. Just this one snapshot of something that has come out of your brain. And so I think, yeah, again, perspective and that like mindset you have when you're receiving that can change it
And it
entirely.
leads, yeah, and 4,000 submitted, 500 selected,
Hmm.
and somebody that's one of the 500 is complaining about a comment they got. And it's like, well, at least you were selected because there were 3,500
Yeah.
that probably thought they had really great quilts, and they were really great quilts that are never going to see the light of the day that year at that show. So stop complaining.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. It's like, okay, well, you got picked. So congratulations, your quilt is hanging in a show. It might not have a ribbon next to it, but it still got picked to be seen. And yeah, it's kind of like, you know,
It's a different world.
a game of lava or just like jumping from
Yeah.
platform to platform to try to stay out of the fire, not get burned. But
But there's a quilt hanging there, and that guy, it looks to me like that's a guy's name, and I'm there with my wife, and I see that, oh, there's guys
yeah,
that do this. Oh, I could do that. To me, that's the kind of the goal of part of the goal of it as well.
yes.
Oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
Anybody, I could
Yeah.
do that. Never thought I
Yeah.
could. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is a nice, like a pleasant surprise. It's like sometimes I see a quote, I'm like, oh, I freaking love that. And I look at the artist name, I'm like, oh, a dude made this. This is so cool. Like
yeah.
for, not to
Kid,
tokenize like males in
12-year-old,
quilting.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like kids that do it.
Oh,
It's like, oh
youth.
my gosh. Yeah. It's just exciting to see. And um I last year's my local quilt show when we were doing the judging, there was, we have a youth category, and this young boy had made a bookcase quilt with his mom, and it was like one of those kind of wizard themed, so it had all this stuff, and he did most of it because that's part of it. The kid has to do at least like 70% of it, I think, but they can have help with quilting and the hard, the kind of trickier bits. But his mom was like, yeah, he pieced about 90% of it. He did this moon in the top corner. He did the curve himself, the circle, and did all this stuff. And he won that category because it was just so well done. And so to just like see that happen and get to like watch him receive his ribbon and get featured in this, really cool quilt show where we have thousands of people come, and I was just like, yes, we need more of this. Like this is so exciting, and to just encourage boys to do what they want to do, what looks fun, and don't shame them for wanting to do something creative, because I think that's what happens too a lot to little boys is they get shamed for wanting to do something
Or girls with
artistic.
wrestling, or
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
I
they
mean, it
love.
goes both ways, but
Yeah.
I just think watching, like I was allowed to do as much crafting as creating as I wanted to as a kid for the most part. But then it's like if my
Sure.
brother, yeah, if like my brother who's just a year younger than me wanted to try something or like was playing with me with my Barbies, if we were just like playing together, it was just like he got made fun of.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If I wanted to try something like my dad would never teach me how to golf. I was like, I want to learn how to golf. You golf, everybody golfs. Like, I want to learn how to golf. Like, I was the only girl in my family besides my mom and my grandma for most of my life. So, like, I was like, just teach me. And he was like, no, this is for the guys. And you're not, yeah, I don't know. Like, it was just this whole thing. And then finally, I told my husband, I was like, I'd really like to learn how to just like golf. Like I don't want to get good or anything. I just want to like know, can we go to the little three par? He's like, yeah, sure. He's like, I suck, but I'll show you like the basics of how to hold a club and stuff. I was like, how hard was that, Dad? Like, you know. And so I think just experiencing the kind of flip side of both things, it's just,
I think the world's getting better.
I hope
I think
so.
as quilting has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, that it's getting better, and hopefully some of the quilt police are getting weeded out. So because the more people that come along that are good and want to help and talk it's been great, to talk about. We share an interest in quilting, and it's great to talk to people about that. And
Yeah,
I think it's getting better.
I think so too. I agree. It's yeah, yeah. It can be easy to get discouraged sometimes, but I think you're right. I think overall it is getting better. So it's good. It's so good. What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the army.
Oh, okay. That's fine, I guess. My
Oh,
I'm just kidding. My
uh-oh.
husband and my son were Air Force, so
My husband was in the Navy, so yeah.
it's all over the place. I know. I guess
I
my
saved for
father-in-law.
20.
Yeah, you did. That's so I know. I'm like, we just gotta
That
go do
check buys a lot of fabric every. No, I'm just joking.
right. Like I'm rich. No. No, that's cool. And thank you for
It's
your
been on
service.
fabric.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like I spend it wisely, you guys. It's fine. No, that's awesome. And thank you for your service. And
thank you.
I was just curious because yeah, my brother was in the Marines and yeah, then
Oh,
I've got Air Force babes over here and my father-in-law and mother-in-law were both in the Air Force and then my father-in-law went on to be in the Army later and so it's like it's all over the place in my family, but that's so cool. And then so did you kind of going backwards into your career, I guess. Now that we've talked all the quilting stuff, do you were you doing nursing and all that as in the Army or did you do that
yes,
before?
I joined the army, and I went to school initially to be a dental hygienist,
Okay.
and I like that, but I really found I really liked patient care a lot, and I had my dad's sister was 22 and died of cancer when I was like 8 or 9, and so
Oh,
my cousins and I was always kind of interested in how that cancer experience changed all of our lives. So I always wanted to be a cancer nurse. And so then after
mhm.
I'd finished my first 4 years in the army sent me for 3 years to finish my nursing degree. And then I spent the rest of my time as a nurse. So
Okay.
so part of the time when I served, it was always in patient care, but in nursing.
Okay. Awesome. That's I know a few people who've like gone through military so that they could do nursing or do medical school and it's just a, a cool way to go about that, but that's awesome.
It paid for college because again, I was
Yeah.
from a family that, didn't have a lot of money, so it was a good
Yeah.
way to pay for school.
Yeah, that's why my older boy went in because he was like, I want to go to a good school and I want to do, he wants to do some kind of engineering. He was thinking aerospace, but now he's kind of shifting. But anyway, it doesn't matter. He's like, that's how I'm gonna get money for school because we were like, sorry, bud, we're not gonna be able to pay for it. And so it was his avenue
Good life
in.
experience for most people too.
Yeah, he couldn't wait to get out. But he also went in right
What?
during COVID lockdown. So
Oh,
when he was graduating from basic training is when all the lockdowns happened. So we flew down to Texas to go see him and then we couldn't see him and we were all just like sobbing messes the whole week. So it was not the best entry, but
interesting time, huh?
yeah, for sure. But anyway, yeah, I was that question was just like popping around in my head this whole time we've been talking. So I just wanted to make sure I asked because um, you know, it's important and I think serving your country is a definitely if you feel passionate about it, I feel like that's an avenue for you. It can be a really cool space to be in if you
Yeah.
are
I'm
willing
not sure
to.
how I would feel about it now. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I won't say when, but it's and I don't, well, I guess I'm older now and I have different opinions about things. I didn't have a lot of opinions or money.
Mhm.
So it just seemed like the right thing to do, but I'm not sure how I would feel about it now, but I
Yeah.
have to make that decision. I have to decide what color is going to go in, what's next in my curve quilt that I'm making.
Right. Yeah. It's one of
Good
those
luck.
things where it's done, you did it. Like you can't, yeah, you don't have to decide
Yeah,
what it looks like now. It's already
couldn't
been
make the
done.
same decision because we're different.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and getting to know more about you. And
yeah, I've enjoyed
so,
talking with you.
yeah, thank you. But before we wrap up, do you have a tip or a piece of advice that we can offer to the listeners?
Yeah, I think it's rest. I think
Mm,
it comes twofold, which is at the end of a day of quilting, like I said, when you're getting ready to put your finger through the sewing machine, or when or your back is hurting, or when things just don't seem to be working, or you're making mistakes or errors. It's always good, I think, to shut the sewing machine down and walk away from it. It could be in the middle of the day too, and go for a walk. Or the other
mhm.
thing I do find is not just rest for a day, but there are times where I just feel like I will call it my gas tank is just empty on creativity.
Yeah.
And that scares me because this is my life now, and I'm afraid that it will go away, but it never does. But it's always, I think, good to take a break away from all of that. Put the fabric away, step away from it, read a book, go on vacation, and don't take something that you can sew, on the airplane, really step away from that and just try to take a break. And it has always been very successful for me because my tank refills and I'm ready to go again. And so my advice would be rest for a day, rest for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And it's never served me wrong. So
Yeah.
there
Well,
you
that's
go.
great. And thank you. And yeah, I think don't you find like when you pay attention to the other areas of your life, it does refill and refeed that creativity. And you start to experience things because you're not looking at it from a lens of like, okay, I got to make this thing and I have to focus on making this thing. And you look up, it's almost like, move your gaze to something else, look at something else, and that almost because you're experiencing more things outside of that creative space, it can feed new creativity, new ideas. And so,
Because definitely when you're taking a break, I still have that longing of, wow, I wish I was sewing a seam, or wow, I wish I was.
yeah.
Okay, I never say that. But that longing, and you just kind of feel like, but you're also standing at your car, filling your gas tank, and you're knowing that you're going to be driving away with a full tank. So
Mhm.
I do find it's a good respite.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And I just can't wait for everybody to hear this episode and to, if they aren't familiar with you, to get familiar with your work and to see all the beautiful stuff you make. And you know it's can be kind of shady outside, so when you can make something bright and beautiful, it's a win. So thank you for putting your art out into the world.
And thank you for what you do of bringing people together. So
Thank
very
you.
admirable to try to bring people together and to learn different perspectives. So
Yeah.
it's been really fun, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carl, and we will stay in touch.
All right.